Blog Talk Radio.
Well, this is the Blog Talk Radio recording for the Cortes conversation. This is a little bit preliminary while we're getting it set up. I'm just about to call in Eleanor and add her to the conference. I think probably if you disconnect from the Skype and I'll hook you.
Hello?
Eleanor, this is Michael.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eleanor. And I've announced briefly that this is a conversation between us and this is the Open Money Development Group in the Comox Valley, Ernie Jacob and Michael Linton, and we're talking with Eleanor on Cortes Island about the issues surrounding the what shall we do about money, what's next issues that are with so many communities. Eleanor has given us a bunch of questions that we're going to be able to rattle through quite quickly, but perhaps, Eleanor, you could begin with 30 seconds and tell us what's all happening in your place.
Well, I started the Cortes Exchange in January of this year with a little support from Literacy Now. There seems to be a lot of interest in bartering and how to facilitate it more here.
I beg your
we
pardon.
currently use a one-to-one system only of exchange. So it's just using a simple listserv. People can write the listserv and offer opportunities for trading, and then others can write that person directly if they have exactly what that person needs, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And we find it can be a little limiting because it's hard to find people who have exactly what you want and want exactly what you offer.
Yeah.
So we're very interested in exchange systems that allow for third-party trading. And so that's where we are here.
Exchange systems that allow. I think that's pretty much the whole concept behind open money, mutual credit, community currencies, let systems, time systems, share networks. It's just making things possible by being able to take such account as we need, track the numbers where we need to keep numbers and not where we don't. And maybe we can use that as a starting off point if we take the questions you proposed, which I grouped according to a sort of a context, the practical details of how to do it, also the development issues, like how do you put it all together, and some closing questions if we have time for them on extra points, which aren't really so salient, but maybe quite interesting. Shall we go with that route, or do you have a preference with it? We'll go with it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Try that.
Yeah. So
Can you explain what open money is?
Well, open money is what is. It's a little bit like if we went around to people and said, "Look, do you know the world is round?" They'd be saying, "Yes, we know the world is round." But there was a time when the world was flat, and it was an explanation to people to say that it was otherwise, or there was more to it than that. And we're in that world at the moment. We've been so used to money as an authority thing that's created by governments and banks and people out there, and it's got to be double stamped by 45 people. And the money is the thing that has power and control and authority and meaning. And you and I, we just got to use it when it goes by. Now, that's been the perception, and that I'd say it's a flat earth perception of money. The reality is that any group of consenting people, organizations, can monetize their interactions and their collaborations and their processes just by keeping track and keeping score. A mutual credit system where we all start at zero, and I get something from you, and I credit you $50, and you are therefore up 50, and I'm down 50, and so on. You spend with somebody else, So you get that generalized exchange and transaction, and there's some recording of it. Well, that's what is possible in the open money context. Any group of people, any group of businesses, any group of organizations, government networks, whatever, formal, informal, who cares, can set up a little network or a large one so that they can better support their common economic process, what they do with each other. It's basically the space is open for people to say, yeah, that was a good job, $30. I'll do good on that myself later. That's just a social statement in the space. It's as legitimate as free speech. So anywhere where free speech is available, we consider open money equally accessible to any group, any people. There you go. That's one, wasn't it?
I've also seen the term green money used. Is that the same, do you think?
Well, right in the very beginning, we talked about green dollars with the LET system in 82, 83. I like to say we came out just the same time as the Green Party in Canada. But coincidentally, not because we named for each other. And certainly there's a sense in which a recirculating community money is green. It's sort of vital thing. It's ecologically much more restrained. People won't trash the rainforest for community currency. They won't sell armaments for community currency. So things that happen with community currency are different. So I've always been comfortable with it being the green money. I've also always felt that it's the feminine aspect of the yin-yang considerations of money. Conventional money is very yang, very power, very authoritarian. A thing that exists, stacks of gold coins or piles of bills or something, and we fight for it. That's the yang model. The yin model, it's the nature of the relationship, the collaboration, the balance, the give and take, the to and fro, the breathing in, breathing out, the giving, the getting. Very different.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but can you tell me other ways that open money differs from conventional money?
Well, fundamentally, we talk about the three characteristics: what a thing does, what it is, and where it's from. And for a money, what it's got to do is be effective. It's got to buy stuff. And conventional money will buy almost anything, almost anywhere. It goes everywhere. So what we say about conventional money is it goes everywhere, and that's really the problem. So money comes onto Cortes, it supports activities, but you spend it, and what do you know, it's gone again. And that leaves the community short of money because of the fact that the Canadian dollar can go anywhere. That's what it's meant to do. It does it very well, and it did. It went. That's the problem. Now, it's the distinction between money that goes away and we have no control over, and money that we can devise, declare, create, organize on our own terms, in our own needs, for our own purposes. And the distinction is fundamentally that one of them thinks it exists, like a gold coin or a stack of dollar bills or something. It's a substantial thing. In open money, what we consider the monetization is a sort of form of mutual measurement and acknowledgement. Like if we look at the act is the gift. Like somebody gives me some bread, I acknowledge that it was a $3 loaf. Somebody paints my house, I acknowledge that it was a $600 job. Those reciprocal statements are measurements, and they allow the movement of my account, the other person's account, up and down, just like a little bank. It's just that this little bank, the money can only move inside. It can't go away, and it doesn't exist. So those are the two distinctions. Conventional money thinks it exists. Community money knows that it exists as relationship amongst the people. It's a very different concept. And one's more flexible than the other. The conventional money must converge towards power, centralization, and control. We can't have everybody printing the Canadian dollar. It'd be all over the place, wouldn't it? So it's got to be restricted to the processes of the Bank of Canada and the Mint and whatever. And so money, the stuff we know and desire so much, seems to be out of our control in so many ways. Open money is the money that is of our control.
You believe that we should endeavor to use only open money, or
I don't think that's
for conventional money?
I don't think it's practical to even talk about only open money. I mean, there's some individuals that would be perfectly practical, that's for sure. But for a society, for a community, for a region, the import-export considerations are still going to be the very dominant factor in the economy. We've all got to pay, I don't know, mortgages or gas, or baby needs new shoes, or prescriptions. Money that's got to be hard cash, hard deals at this point. And it'll be a long time before that changes, so we never even introduce that as an either-or. We do say that the more you use open money, perhaps the less you will need to be chasing the conventional. But that's a choice. It's not a requirement that you abandon one to get the other. In fact, we rather recommend the opposite. That if you use open money systems effectively, it will probably improve your overall financial well-being very nicely. Should do, at least.
I feel like it'd be really useful in a rural community such as Cortes, because it seems so much of our money, our conventional money, does go off island, and there's not necessarily enough circulating here to really represent all the exchange that could potentially be going on.
So right, that's exactly the situation and the problem. But it's not just an island. I'm looking at a map on the wall of my office, London. It shows all the ethnic areas throughout London. The Afghanis and the Kurds and the Jamaicans and the Greeks and whatever. And how many cities are there in London? And yet the same thing applies. That they're each got this little island sensation about them, that the money can come in and spin around and flow out. But we need means to retain it inside our own networks, our own communities, be they a subset, a neighborhood in London, or an island on the Pacific Northwest. We need our own money.
Can you tell me about multiple currencies?
Yes, this is one of the big issues, is to understand that trying to offset or to establish a single currency in your island, your community, your city, as some sort of a complement or a balance to conventional money is a very difficult thing to do, because it isn't going to be the same. It's going to be, there's a lot of things that the local money won't be able to do that the main money will, and so if you're trying to set A against B, it's no competition really, and this will always put you in a secondary position and with a secondary agenda. On the other hand, if what you offer is the ability for there to be many different currencies in the community, then it's like turning on the lights and the color in a black and white set, black and white TV was fine as far as it went, but when you got color TV, you didn't want green and black TV, you didn't want blue and black TV, you wanted all the colors, because without all the colors you haven't got a paint box. And it's the same thing with currencies, that one is good, but it's much more unstable. It's a bit like a unicycle in a way. A bicycle is easier, a tricycle much easier. Progressively we get to wider and wider stability, more options with it. Let me suggest, for instance, that the internet has just reached Cortes. Okay, it's been everywhere else in the world, but it's just reached Cortes. But we've got you can have the internet on Cortes, but you can only use it to discuss municipal politics. That would be absurd. when you get a network of information like the internet, you should be able to do anything you like with it. So you can have 1,000 discussion groups in any one community that are discussing seniors issues, art issues, music, whatever, technical, all different strands. Well, we've got to see monies as similarly diverse, varied, specific to task. In my little neighborhood on the end of my suburban street, for instance, if I want to timeshare tools or cars or kids or something with my neighbors, I'm not going to do it by the dollar. My little network I'm going to do by, counting the hours or something. Maybe we won't even keep score through the network. Maybe we'll just keep score in our own heads or mark on the fence with a pencil or something like that. That's the nature of an open money multi-currency model. It's the appreciation that we can do all sorts of things, and to take advantage of that variety, so that it's the variety of multiple currencies that show us what this tool really is, rather than one pinpoint singular money. Effective as it is, and make no mistake, I'm absolutely in favor of starting up a single currency if that's all you're ready for and are going to go for. But it is more difficult, and the best thing to do in our view is start off a single currency within the context of multiple options, and then let those multiple systems emerge according to local interest, design, application.
Okay, so it's like to organize thematic networks of exchange. Maybe like you starting with like a child care exchange and a carpooling exchange and a tool exchange and just any of the various. Yeah,
because they have different things. Child care is not the same as tools. And you got to look at it differently, or it's good to be able to look at it differently.
Is this sort of like a way of acknowledging value of something without having to resort back to
hard cash,
what it is in conventional money as value?
That too, by taking some things out of the sort of dollar valuation space, we change the social behaviors that we have about it.
I'm sorry?
No, so I think that's good. I think we ought to have many different dimensions within which we can express the value.
And have there been cases where these multiple currencies are then exchangeable within themselves? I mean, with another currency in? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that is very much the model. Now, it's not like I'm in my own credit union and I've got a savings account and a checking account and I can move money from one to the other. That's the same money moving between different buckets in the banking system. When I have a bunch of, say, Cortes dollars and I have a bunch of local hours from my local, child care or car share network or whatever it is, I can't just move the hours into the dollar or the dollar into the hour. They're totally independent systems. But on the other hand, my neighbor may be really short on hours and want to have some, and long on the Cortes dollar, which you want. So the way that it will happen is that there'll be quite an easy, open buy and sell of the different currencies between the protagonists. But it's between people. There isn't going to be a sort of an automatic put your money in here, take it out there style that changes from currency to currency. This is really about the supporting of varied communities and sort of neo-tribes, and the neo-tribal aspect of our society, the networks that we build and nurture and persist with. And that's what the multi-currency supports.
So they're very unique to whatever community they're functioning in.
Yes, you see, some of them might be 5-year projects, like we're going to build your house this year. Next year we're going to clear his land. The year after that, we've got this plan to put in a road on his property, and we're just going to roll things around. And so there's a 5-year perspective on the whose turn is it sort of deal. There's others down at the bar who's buying beer tonight. Now those things are much shorter turnovers. So you've got to have the capacity to reflect the complexity of society with complex money systems. Doesn't mean they're difficult or complicated. In fact, quite the opposite. It's become so much easier to maintain the balance that I have in my different communities if I'm, using different currencies in each of them.
It sounds like we're really already using multiple currencies, like at some level. I'm sure there's plenty of us swapping dinner dates and like who's paying which night and all kinds of.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on, and and the point we would make is that a lot more can go on when it becomes more transparent, more available, more manageable. It can get a little tricky with those dinner swaps or whatever, where you can't quite remember whose turn it is, or or who owes who what, or wherever, and that they can stagnate quite quickly. They can get into bad atmosphere quite easily in those areas. So it's sometimes a lot more effective to have different forms of scoring. Now, I'm not saying about dinner exchange with my neighbors or something like that, but there's many things like who painted the community hall last, who put time into the gardening on the neighborhood lot. It's good to have a score sheet.
Yeah, and that way more people can be involved as well. I guess it gets more complicated as more and more people want to.
Well, we like to see it as more complex, more varied. Yeah.
More diverse. More opportunities. That's
exactly.
That's better.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do the new incarnations of open money differ from the original Let's system?
Well, and my standard answer to that is that if Let's was a game like poker or bridge or Snap, to pick your preference, then open money is the deck of cards. It's the whole, here's a whole tool set, and you can play a bunch of different games. It's like having a stadium where you can play 25 different sports, rather than this is the soccer stadium or this is for basketball. Let's was singular. It was intended as a first design to show the easiest way for a group of people to collaborate without having a central administrative control. I think it's very important in the effectiveness of a community of money players that they are a community. They're not a subsidiary group. There isn't an organization has decided this is the money, you guys get to use it. That's got value, but it's got a very much less value than an emergence of a self-managing collaboration without a central authority structure. So the Let's system was what we came up with in 82, 83. And at that stage, we believed one was good, one was enough. Things would expand and propagate, replicate, crossover, and whatever. We've now got the internet. At that stage, we had telephones and an answering system, and it was quite difficult to organize complex things with those tools. But now, the internet makes it so possible for us to have localized networks, multiple forms. Cortes might have dozens of currencies on it within a year or so. The whole of the island can be another network, and your Cortes account could be part of the Vancouver Island currency network, and you could be spending money in Victoria and Chemainus and Tofino or wherever, and others vice versa. So it's a networking system if you go for the multiple friends. So what we say open money is it's like the operating system, it's the platform, It's the space on which you can have a let system, you can have a time bank, you can have an investment network, you can have a football club support group, you can have a church congregational charitable fund, you can have a land trust, you can have a community-supported agricultural project, you can get into energy investment. I'm sure there's a few other things you can do. So that's why we say do the platform, not just the one game.
Right. That's really interesting. Sounds limitless and
it is
broad, inclusive. I like that.
Free is the big word, you know. Arnie's just waving his hands to the side, saying free, free. I think he's trying to fly. It's the nature of space that you get it, right? We're so used to being stuck on the tracks, in the channel, in the road, in the box, which is what our conventional society has gradually built up around institutions like money. And once you get the sense of this is limitless, this goes on open space for collaborative design and practical process, well, that's fun. Anyway.
It's also not obligatory, too.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. Sometimes I've had to really express to people, and when they're considering joining the Cortes Exchange, they feel like it's just another thing they're going to have to do, and that they're going to have to know what they're going to trade, and this kind of temptation.
Membership. The first thing that membership does is it creates I'm not a membership. People don't want to join clubs, quite reasonably. I mean, some people want to join clubs, particular or in general. But most people are they find an imposition in the sense of task, membership, identification, all sorts of things. Now, what we'd suggest is by opening the the namespace, as we call it, for Cortes, letting people join in if they like, take your name. And that's your account name on Cortes. And then group as you like, when you like, where you like, for what you like. And particularly, don't join anything you don't want to be in. Very important. There is absolutely no sense of compulsion. It's just, hey, we're in this water, feels fine. You want to join us? Huh?
Yeah. Great. So, can you tell me a little bit about how the LET system works? I know it's not.
Oh yeah, it's important stuff. Though it's because we still look at it as the wheel. The simplest arrangement of agreements amongst users, which is compatible with Canadian law, tax law, accounting, social behavior, marketability, 1,000 other things. We think the LET system is just great, and we do actually expect the LET system to be the common baseline for community currencies everywhere. Not unique. There'll be time banks. There'll be all sorts of other things. But where business is going to be done on the high street, in the city, in the country, wherever, LET system will be the standard application, because it's uncontrolled, and you are in charge of your own behavior, and if you do good, you'll do well. Quite simple. Now the details are all over the website, the design manual, at the link that I left on that page to you, and we'll publish that in our notes and whatever. And it goes into lots of explanation of the philosophy and the detail and the why it is non-authoritarian, why it is a LET system, why it allows, why it's something you can participate in, and you can take it or leave it. And it's not a problem if people join in, do a bit, and then fade out for a few months or a year and then come back in. No problems. So it's very unclubby, and it's the one that we expect to see taken up most of the mainstream in due course. But it's not the only one, of course, and we'd encourage people to look in general at startup models and what I call educational models. Educational models are things like car shares and score on who helped out at the community hall, who put on the party that night or whatever, stuff like that. The very low-key system. You could run a Scrabble tournament with it, for instance, who knows. But the more definite ones are the ones where you start saying, listen, we are trying to build something here. What are we investing in our community? Maybe it's a new community hall. Maybe it's an improvement to the drainage system. Maybe it's a little bus on-call service. Maybe it's more childcare. Maybe it's whatever. So
you're touching on all the topics of interest on Cortes, it seems.
Well, it was just a guess. Just a guess.
Points there.
You can pretty well find them anywhere too. It's the same story. You got to say, no money, plenty to do. What are we going to do? Create your own money, create your own networks. And this business of approaching it from the level of what do we have to do to have this work, in our view, should direct you to the idea of essentially charitable fundraising as an opening style. It's like you've shown up in town with this new toy that nobody's ever seen before. Let's call it a grand piano, right? Nobody's ever seen a grand piano before, and you come into town with it. You've got to play a tune before anybody knows what it's for. Well, in a way, Community Way and fundraising for a project is the tune that shows people what the platform will support. If you come into town one day and say, listen, we want to build a new extension to the school, it's going to cost $150K. Come on, line up, put down your money. And thank you, no. It'll take a long time to get $150K together, for instance, for a project like that, if you're looking for cash and support and buy-in and people feeling secure with the risk that they're undertaking and what do we get back later and all that. On the other hand, you could just do it with community money in a matter of weeks. Set the process up, establish the gives and gets, and get on the job. I mean, literally in a few weeks, you could put together something that generated $100,000 or more in project capital for something specific on your island. And within that, it covers all the running costs, the installation costs, everything like that. It's totally, the platform itself becomes a transparent commons, a commodity on the island.
Okay. So somehow, say there's a community project, as you mentioned, with the school. Somehow the exchanges are expanding beyond just the school. People are maybe giving five hours to installing a window. Will they somehow in the network receive some groceries or?
Well, let's go straight for the. It could be done that way. That would work, but it's too short a tie-in to generate the sort of. It's like a root-bound pot in a way. It doesn't go out wide enough. So our model would be rather that. Some local businesses put up some community money for the school project.
And this is the basis for the Community Way dollar, which is your current baby, as is. Is that right? This is the basis for the Community Way dollar, which you're working on right now.
Yes, yeah. Community Way is a descriptive term. It's nothing more than to say, look, if a community is looking after its own affairs, then there will be community money donated. People find it quite difficult to donate hard cash, businesses, individuals, because we're also quite short of it and we can't afford to throw it around like it was careless or something. But so. The difference with community money is that we do have plenty of it, and we're expecting it to become something like a tithing. That is, once community currencies are well established in your community, most people who use it will commit about 10% of their turnover towards community charities, good works, investments, whatever. Now, that may sound like a crazy thing. I mean, when did you last hear of tithing in the context of the Canadian economy? Doesn't happen very much. But we think that with community currency, tithing will become a standard scale, quite common. And so the community way model that we kick this thing off with is businesses starting by making substantial donations to substantial projects, which means that, for instance, a school might be in possession of $100,000 of essentially credit at the local building merchant, the local grocery store, the local, whoever. Everybody can join in. Any business can say, I'm going to help support this and pitch in a bit of community currency, credit on their sale. And then the people who work on the actual project, people who supply to it, whatever, can be paid in that community money, which brings them back to the businesses. So there's a cycle. Though you've actually chosen to do something, and you're using a currency to implement it. And that's our preferred direction, is to make it something that people can see and understand and say, well, we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we'd used our own money. And
the community way dollar being used in Comox is actually printed cash. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways it can be done. You could do it with coins, you could do it with checkbooks, you could do it with things like traveler's checks. We've printed up some resistant to counterfeit plastic embossed bills. They're nice. They're pretty cheap. It didn't cost us a lot to do it. And frankly, it could have been done even cheaper and better than we did it, as it will be. The costs are not substantial. For even a few $100, you can print out good enough stuff that would work on the island.
What are the advantages to using a printed cash as opposed to, keeping track roulettes or?
Well, we think both. We absolutely think both. It's the advantage of cash is that there's going to be a lot of people on the island who are going to be naturally sluggish, resistant, suspicious of this weird thing, don't want to be in it, don't want to be on the computer or something. But if the bills start floating around Cortes and it becomes easy to take, easy to spend, then the bill becomes a contagious component. It allows people to participate and contribute even when they're not sort of fully in the game. And that's a nice help. It gives another channel into the game. But ultimately, we expect most people to have a bank account on the virtual money, just like a credit union account. It's your open money account. You can log in and look at it and make payments or see what the balances are and this sort of thing with community money. No cash, no nothing like that. That's difficult. But community money, very easy, straight on the computer. And you can draw out the paper currency if there's a paper currency. So your account would be debited $300 if you took 300 pieces of paper. So basically, it's both. Is our answer.
What is being used currently in Comox?
We're using plastic paper. Yeah,
so it's just that. Are there other currencies that are being used in tandem with it? Or?
You mean has our multi-currency process begun here?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I'd have to say no. That's the first answer. We don't really have anything. We have a multi-currency facility. That is, anybody who's registered on our network can start a currency in the next 25 seconds. They could do it. And other people could join, and then they could have parallel currencies going. But it hasn't begun here at all. And I think it's because we've had almost 30 years of history in the valley here now of community currencies. And there's a very strong suspicion about it in the Comox Valley, a very strong suspicion about me and just about as much about Ernie. So between us, we're not sort of the flagship poster boys for getting things going here. The community way here was started principally by Peter Foster and by Adil Amlani, of the Sure Photocopy. Peter Foster is social networking with continual palingenesis. And they basically came to the idea and said, look, why don't we do this? And they've done most of the development, the networking that's brought it together here. But at this stage, nobody's sort of moved into the multiple currencies because there's, I think, just too much trepidation in this community, not enough imagination of the possibilities yet. So everybody's sort of testing out Community Way to see if it takes them to the promised land, and when it does, then they'll come back for their friends and neighbors. That's my feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You see, one of the things, I better put this in quickly here because it's just to balance that off. The thing about an imaginary money is you've got to imagine it. You've got to imagine you believe in it. Because if you imagine you don't believe in the imaginary money, you better believe it's not there. You know, it's not going to be. Now, there's nowhere more dependent upon people's sense of, yeah, this works, I believe it, it makes sense, and I'm using it, and it's worked for me, and so what's the question, you know? Unfortunately, in the Comox Valley, that's just not our position. There are a large number of people in the Comox Valley who are quite convinced that this is utterly impractical, impossible, immoral, and should be avoided or something.
Yeah, I mean, even conventional money it works entirely because we believe in it or not, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the LET system has I've noticed that it has succeeded and oftentimes has failed to keep hold in certain places. I know it's being used in thousands of places in the world. Is that fair to say?
Oh yes, yes. It's one of the most
attempted or
attempted, initiated, prospered or flourished. In some cases, thrived for a while. Then, in most cases, there's been some sort of a collapse of people's expectations or belief, and they say, "Oh, just a minute, I knew this wouldn't work. The sky is falling." And so they all sort of back away from it. It's like a dance is going on and everybody's having a great time, and then suddenly the floor is sort of clearing a bit. And I think it's been largely the lack of confidence. There's nothing wrong with the model. It's not easy to understand, perhaps, or easy to comprehend until you're using it and comfortable with it. But it's not going to get better. What's going to happen, however, is that we get better at recognizing how these things are and that they are as strong as our community, and just get on with doing it, not making up excuses for our difficulties of this, you know. I look at the LET system history over the last 25-something years, and I look at it as a testament to the survival of the basic idea that even when it's badly administered, badly supported by documentation or technology, or the person who begins it in your community is a bit weird, so everybody finds everybody else a bit weird or whatever. Despite all of those negative issues, you laugh. The damn thing just keeps on. You see, when we are technically multi-currency because I have all the data from 1983 is still on our books, and the balance of everybody who was part of the system in 86 when it sort of went soggy, that's still where it is. It's on the accounts. And they can start again when they're waking up, if they waken up to that. And similarly from the past, the history didn't go away. So we look at our systems rather like a bicycle that ended up in the shed because somebody lost interest in it or had to pump up the tires and couldn't be bothered. But the bicycle's fine, and the bicycle still works, and it's up to us to find our bikes and get on them.
Is it fair to say that that these alternative currencies are, I don't know, more popular when the economy is not doing great, and maybe when the economy is doing well, we might be part of the reason we forget or lose interest or confidence in it?
Yes, there's a lot of excitement. People are hard money is a hard drug. You know, you need it to maintain your place in society. To pay for the shoes so that you can have the job, so that you can have the car to go to the job where you need the shoes and all that. And so if there's money to be made, people are pretty focused on it. Now, when the cash economy dies and people look around for a lifeboat or something to hang on to, they tend to look at this as a rope being thrown to them. They don't see that it's actually a totally new way of dealing with the issue of money. So we're a bit, we think the drowning man educational model is not good. When people are really suffering, they don't think perfectly well. So we're as happy to expand these ideas even when the economy is, as it may one day, be thriving. For a start, we want this sort of economy to be working to make our thriving economy more ecological, more ethical, more appropriate, because the conventional economy will never do that. But I'm getting philosophical. Excuse me.
It's inevitable, I think, talking about money.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how the community way dollar is working? How is the money actually created and coming into circulation?
Well, you can see a good deal of that at the communityway.ca site, and there's a bit there where it says about the numbers. And if you look down there, there's the current numbers in the tab, and that'll give you a graphic that shows how much money we have put into circulation through this process so far, and sort of how it's distributed in bills and how it's still in accounts. Because it starts off with simple accounting. We got a collection of half a dozen businesses, and then a dozen businesses, and then about 20 businesses into, well, sounds like a good idea. I would do it if they would. Discussion. You know, you've got to sort of get the wagons in a bit of a circle. Once we got those businesses agreed in principle to make donations of about 1,000 community way dollars per employee to charities or projects of their choice. Once we'd made that general agreement and agreements about how they would accept that dollar at a restaurant, say 50% of the meal price, in a retail store, it might be 20-30%. In a grocery store, maybe 15-20%. A masseur might do 100%. It's up to them. But basically, once we got that agreement, we had a list then of the businesses that were making offers. We had a list of the charities that had received offers. And we just put those up on that site. And you can see that on communityway.ca. Now, the next thing is we want people in the general public to go to their charity, their school board, their whatever it is that's got these community way dollars and buy them with cash at dollar is a dollar. So I go to Project Watershed, or I go to the Women's Transition Center, or I go to the Cat Care project, and I give them $100 in cash, and they give me 100 community way dollars. Now that's fair exchange, no robbery. They're happy, I'm happy, but they've got cash, and I've got money that now is brought me into this recirculating community currency. This is money that I take to the businesses that were the sponsors. It doesn't go to the businesses that weren't the sponsors because they don't take it. But the businesses that started it have now got my loyalty. So I go there and I spend there, and then they spend the money on and on and on, and we have this little whirlpool of local money, our own maintaining flywheel of community currency derived from that cycle. Business donate, in community money, no cash. Charities, community groups get it as a received donation, again, not in cash, in community money. Maybe they can use it directly, that's fine, but more typically they sell it. Dollar is a dollar. That way you and I, as general members of the public, and I'm targeting $500 a month this way that I will spend in the community on community dollars, so that I put out 500 cash to a bunch of different community groups and I get 500 community dollars. So it doesn't hurt me, but I can go shopping in the businesses that are behind it. that's the model.
Those dollars could also be the community way. The community money can be spent maybe paying volunteers or.
Yep.
Or. Okay.
Yeah. Anything the charity wants to do is just great.
And then that circulation is moving in the public. We don't have very many businesses on Cortes. I mean, like storefront businesses. Just a handful, really, in our town. You could blink and miss it driving by it. So, but we're a lot of entrepreneurs here. Can entrepreneurs, individuals?
Absolutely. Oh yes, absolutely. We in fact we really see this as reaching quickly down to the single proprietor, even the part-timer, as a good way of them to be engaged and contributing. You know, at a scale of about $1,000 per individual. Maybe I'm a gardener, maybe I'm a hairdresser, maybe I'm a dentist. Well, you know, 1,000. You know, I earn that back in a year or so, no matter what. You know, because I'm earning back 20, 30, 40. Who knows what my actual cash income is during that period. I can absorb another 1,000 of community money in that period, no trouble. So if you look on our site in communityway.ca, the businesses involved, you'll see a lot of small businesses that are involved. And that's how it should be.
It sounds like the money comes into circulation in a way that sort of mimics the way that the banks do it, in that they create money when they make a promise of a loan, or they give a loan. And in this way, is this right that the community dollars are created when a business makes a promise of that donation to a charity?
Yes, it is the same, and yes, it's very different because normally the bank is in the way. You see, when the same thing about it is we are creating money out of nothing, and normally the banks do it, and then they say, "I'll lend it to you, and I'll charge you interest because look what you took away from me." Curious process, but that's why banks make good big profits. Now, on the other hand, in this situation, when the business goes negative 5,000, you know, it's maybe a restaurant in town, it goes 5,000 negative. It didn't borrow money from anybody. There's no interest payments. There's nothing like that. And they've actually created the money. Yeah, it's a different direction and a different origin and a different relationship, but it's just coming out of the community's, well, collective line of credit, if you like. It's what we feel ourselves to be worth, which is rather different from what the bank thinks it's willing to risk on us.
But this is being kept track of at a sort of centralized location?
Yeah, we publish the graphic of our accounts. You don't get Joe is minus 500 and Eleanor is plus 43. We don't publish that information. What we publish is the graphic that displays how much money is out there and gives an indication of how much is in dollar bills and how much is in the online accounts of the underwriting businesses in particular, so that there's a clear margin between the amount of money that's been printed into circulation and released through the charities and the underwriting that the businesses have they've made the promise to respect. The businesses are basically undertaking something like a gift certificate on their own name to the amount that they've issued. So if they issued $5,000, then they're responsible for honoring $5,000, banking it back into the system, and then they're out if they like. But while they've got an outstanding promise, then they keep the money underwritten. The backing is the community's promise to itself.
With conventional money, there's a lot of interest in profit and savings. Do profit and savings and interest, even, I guess you touched on that, do they play a role in the community way dollars?
Well, no, not really. Certainly savings and interest have got no significant part in money that we create for ourselves. Our anxiety about conventional money is the desperation of being without it, and the sort of warm feeling we get when there's lots in our bank account or our savings or our RSP or whatever. And we strive to have that feeling of security. So if we're asked to part with anything, we want interest, of course, risk, deprivation. Got to pay me for it. So we have this competitive game, which makes it valuable to own money because it means you can rent it to other people. And it's an unfortunate model because it drives us all crazy, like drugs do. Now, once you're in an open money context, the money in that space it doesn't need an interest function. It's unlikely to be ever relevant inside community currencies that there is an interest function. Now, there will be savings. There will be people who start currencies that are designed to prepare for their old age or for, starting a new business in 5 years or something. There'll be ways to create savings accounts in community monies. But they'll come along after everybody's found out how the bicycle is rideable. People won't take long-term bets on something until they've found the short-term to be realistic. So we see the savings thing coming later. Profitability, well, when somebody cuts my hair and charges me $9 or something, they're making a profit. Life is about taking what we can afford and turning it into something that makes it possible for us to make enough profit to live. That's a very simple model. And profit's not a problem. Extractive profit that sucks life out of your community and creates exploitation, that's nasty. But that's not going to happen with community money. So we can have profit, as I say, profit with honor in this context. It's perfectly legitimate to be a productive member of my community, to be earning money in my community and spending that money in my community. That's a give and get that really balances out nicely. So we're all in favor of viability, and that applies to currency itself. That in the development model of putting these things together, it's absolutely imperative that you recognize the device that you're playing with, its own buoyancy, its vitality, its energy, its creativity, and make this work from that, not from, let's go to the provincial government for a grant to help us start something. I mean, obviously, most things need that because they're not financially generative in themselves. But a community currency should be perfectly capable of paying its whole way from scratch and start, and away you go to full flourish without ever asking for a government grant or anything like that as some sort of we need it to get going.
I always find that so odd. I'm often involved in fundraising for projects on Cortes, by asking the government or entities outside of us, outside of the island, to give us money to do things here. And it just seems so odd that we would need that from outside just to do something here. I guess it's just the way it works. Yes, in some cases, certainly we would need more conventional money, but I feel like if we could just organize ourselves a bit better, we could get a lot more accomplished.
Just organize ourselves a bit better, that's for sure. But not from the top down. Organize from the inside out. Organize from the give and get and the balance of our interactions. It's a whole different way to play. Yeah.
Let's see. One thing came to mind is that, the NDG dollar in Montreal, that's I guess they're a currency being used. I think maybe it's an elect system. I think they're keeping track of it electronically in the northern part of Montreal. And they gather monthly and they give prizes to people who spend the most money, spend the most NDG dollars. And I've heard that that's really a healthy system, is that money should be moving, like liquid should be, instead of being held and saved, and but rather in movement.
Yeah, that's one of the classics of conventional money, is that we make it as an item of savings, a store of value, keep it under the bed package, save it up, stack it up. And we also try and make it the thing that we use to put bread on the table and get the world working. So as a means of exchange, it's compromised by trying to be a store of value. And getting the money moving is so important inside community currencies. It's that feeling of, well, what's the point in holding on to this money? I've got $100. Go ahead and spend it. And with this money, you can spend it because it comes back. It's an internal, money back guarantee is one of our lines. So the whole attitude towards Move It can be so much more social and generous and convivial and entertaining and fun. Yeah, we like parties. Now, at the same time, it doesn't need that. Those are just amplifiers, accelerators, the convergent effects. Love it, but I don't think anybody needs to feel that they're part of a sort of a hallelujah glee club or revival that comes out. Frankly, there's a lot of money too, and you don't want to hang around with people like that.
You were just breaking up a little bit at the end there. I'm not sure, hopefully. But now you sound fine.
Oh, good. Okay.
Gosh, I realize I have a list of questions. We've already been speaking for an hour.
Yes.
So should I just pick a few more, or?
Yeah, well, let's wind out a couple, because I think the proper thing to do is to have a review of this in a week or so, and see what it implies. There's an enormous amount of material we've covered. It's delicious. So yeah, pick another couple if you like, and let's make a few comments.
Okay, and then we can see if more questions arise in the future for another conversation.
Of course.
So some community currencies are actually pegged to the dollar, right? There's the Salt Spring dollar or the Chemanis dollar. You can actually trade it at the bank.
Yeah, you can bail out. These are we call these bailout monies. You see, pegging is one thing. In our community way is, as it were, pegged to a dollar because we measure as a dollar, and you call that a pegging. But nobody says, I'm waving this community way dollar in the air, and there is somebody who is obliged to pay me $1 for it, $1 Canadian. That is not in our system. In Chemanis and Salt Spring, it is. You can wave this thing in the air and say, I demand $1, and you can go to the bank and they will give you $1 because there is $1 in the bank for the dollar you had in your hand. So that's the model they use. The trouble with that model is that it's utterly useless. It doesn't do anything at all. It takes one form of money out of circulation to put a paper resemblance of it in circulation briefly, whereupon it gets cashed back by the merchants after it's spent by the tourists who use it. I say it's a bit like ice cubes in a leaking bucket. You got a bucket of water that's leaking, and you've got to keep replenishing it, and you think, oh, I'll put ice cubes in to slow down the leaks. The ice cubes won't slow down the leaks at all. They just rattle around, making a lot of noise, but the same amount of water goes in and out. And the entire analysis of these so-called complementary currencies, and here I'm putting in a little pitch. It's not just Cortes I speak to at this moment. I speak to the transition town movements. I speak to the Berkshires. I speak to the whole community of earnestly intent people who are trying to do good things and are using a very blunt instrument. The cashback dollar, the pound back pound, it's a waste of time. It's a deception, a confusion. It's a cargo cult. It's a drifting money, flotsam on the surface of of the water. It means nothing. It takes up an awful lot of time and money and attention. And we would love to see them convert into honest community way type, community-backed dollars. Be dead easy. Wouldn't take any time or trouble. They could even use the same software and paper that they're using now. So we're looking forward to places like Chemainus and Salt Spring using the ground that they've gained in opening perfectly acceptable currency. Every business in Salt Spring takes the money. Every business in Chemainus will take the money because they can take it to the bank and get cash. So it's not a good idea, even though it works very well.
I also saw, I went to a workshop about the Berkshires a few years ago, and I felt like, well, they were engaging lots of businesses and even, you know, big corporations, even like Walmart, they were engaging, and it seemed like that it wasn't necessarily retaining like community values in the sense that like because it could be used on things created anywhere in the world and you know, just as easily put back into conventional money, that I didn't understand what exactly it was doing.
You were right. And you understood more than 90% of the administrators in those groups. They don't understand what they're not doing and what they are doing. And that is a problem for me. It's been a problem for many years, and I always like to hear when somebody else, at some level or another, sees the same sort of issues. So, yeah, where did you do that? Was that workshop in the East, or was it local?
It was in the East, in Massachusetts. It was at a Bioneers conference, actually. They were just doing a little session.
Yeah. Goodwill, bad idea. Poor thinking. Bloody expensive. Waste of time. And no new dollars. Is the key point, is it doesn't actually change anything in the economy. But and I've talked enough about that for now. So.
Okay. Well, how about we close with just one more question? And do you have any recommendations for Cortes in getting started with currencies?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is just say, oh, we're doing it, you know, which essentially you already have. You know, you've got a group of emergent on the listserv and whatever. And I think in some sense he's declaring, oh yeah, we're going to do this at some level, and opening the shape of it is the first significant act, which probably in a place like Cortes suggests a public meeting, you know, a little bit of theater, music, and food sort of thing, followed by, I would say, intensive couple of sessions for people who are going to be active and administrative rather than just participants and engaged users. That's my shape on it. Is you've got to get people together. You can't do this thing one by one as quickly as you can do it in groups. And so getting people into the circuit, you know, get the wagons in a circle. So that would be my recommendation. One of the beauties of the open money model is that it's all virtual and it can all be undone or not done or done more as you choose. So I think it's one of those no-brainer things in a way, but it's a big step. You know, you got to sort of say, okay, we're going to do something, and then see where it takes you.
You've got to try, give it a chance.
Open the possibility. Let it happen, you know, and it isn't going to happen until somebody has said, oh, look, it's happening.
There's a lot of people here weary of using technology at all. So I'm aware that if we do develop any systems, they need to be inclusive for people who don't want to go on the computer or only have dial-up, right? A lot of us are only on dial-up here.
Well, we ran the first system here in '82 without any of the technology, and frankly, nothing has really changed. And you can have it can be all for people who have a version of the technology. It can be all done on bits of paper, very easy. Checkbooks, things like that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was really informative and enjoyable. I look forward to sharing it with friends and community here. So I'm speaking today with Michael Linton, and this is Eleanor Bazar. And thank you so much for joining us.
Been a pleasure, Eleanor. And Ernie waves his thanks, our silent man behind the keyboard. And the podcast for this will probably be active in about half an hour. It's an automatic process. So anybody who wants to listen in on this can do so. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Eleanor.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.